Excellent. Well, we'll give it just a minute. Looks like, is that Jennifer Price that just joined us?
It is, Sarah. How are
Hi,
you?
it's so good to see you. I saw you registered. I've saw a couple familiar names that registered. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's great to see you.
me
How's it
too. I was
going?
excited. I was like, this is very timely.
Yes, yes, yes. For everybody on the Zoom, Jennifer and I went to law school together. We've known each other for 8 years now. So,
Yeah, I know. Isn't it crazy? I think I got to think about our reunion. I told Matt Brunell,
uh-huh.
I was like, hey, we're having a reunion.
Yes,
Let me remind you, we've both been here 25 years.
it is unbelievable. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Well,
Crazy.
wonderful. It is, it is. And Andrea, what firm are you with?
I
If
own
you
my
can hear
own
me.
law practice and I live in Colorado.
Oh, excellent. What part of Colorado?
I'm in northern Colorado. I live in Eaton. I practice mostly from home, unless I absolutely have to leave my house.
That is wonderful. We're big Colorado fans here, big skiers and snowboarders in my family, and have been searching for powder just like you guys have. I know it's been a rough winter for you guys.
Oh yes, there's going to be lots of things that are struggling in Colorado this year as a result of no white stuff.
Yeah, the water levels in the summer and spring. I know, I know. We're thinking about you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. And B Gallagher, what firm are you with?
Hessel Lisa O'Leary.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I know you. It's great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for doing
I'm
this.
still, yeah, Stacy. Hi, Stacy. What firm are you with? I know it's so tempting to just, sign in and then go grab a cup of coffee. So Stacy may be doing that. Tia, how about you? What firm are you with?
Hi, good afternoon. My firm is Evolve Law, and we're also in Colorado.
Excellent. What part of Colorado are you in?
I'm in the Littleton area, but we are 100% virtual, so we can serve all of Colorado.
Oh, that's wonderful. That is wonderful. Yeah, we at LBO are talking to so many firms that are 100% virtual. And it's kind of amazing to me, thinking back 5, 6, 7 years ago, it never, I would have never believed that we can do the things that we can do. And that's actually a really nice segue into talking about AI and how AI is potentially transforming the legal profession yet again. So we're at 5 after. I'm happy to jump in. I'll introduce myself real quick. I'm Sara Stock. I'm one of the co founders of Legal Back Office. I'm also the founder of Stock Legal. I was an equity partner at a large regional law firm here in St. Louis, Missouri. I left in November of 2014 to start my own practice. And today, Stock Legal is 16 lawyers, several thousand clients. So to say that I have been through what a lot of you are either going through or have been through is an understatement. Legal Back Office came out of or was born from the problems that I was having at Stock Legal as I was trying to grow and scale. And so Legal Back Office helps small to mid-sized law firms throughout the United States. We quantify that as law firms with 1 to about 25 lawyers. That's really our sweet spot where we can be meaningful and really make a difference. We lead with accounting, so bookkeeping, invoicing, AR, AP, payroll. But we also offer marketing services. We do a lot of social media marketing. We offer managed IT services. We do strategic planning. We do hourly recruiting, which is a bit of a differentiator in the market. Not many folks will do hourly recruiting. It's administration. We're not headhunting, but we do hourly recruiting, and then we do a little bit of benefits administration and HR consulting. But I'm here today to talk to you about AI because there's just so much happening in AI and in the way that it impacts law firms. And as a law firm owner myself, I've really dug deep into understanding AI as it currently exists and learning what generative AI is, how generative AI can help me and my team at Stock Legal better service our clients, but to do it in a way that is preserving attorney-client privilege, maintaining confidentiality, and in a way that is accurate, because as we all have read, AI hallucinates with regularity. And so I want to start by telling you that ChatGPT built this presentation. I figured if I was going to get on this Zoom and talk with you about AI and the law, I needed to have a presentation that ChatGPT built, at least the first version. And so, for what it's worth, I'll share with you. I started with, I've got a 32-page memo that we wrote on AI and the law. That 32-page memo pulls from a 50-state survey that I'm going to share with you, and then some other research that our team did. And, because there is no client information in this memo, I uploaded parts of the memo into ChatGPT along with Legal Back Office's brand colors. And the first thing I did was brand colors. And I said, Chat, build a template PowerPoint presentation for me. And Chat did that. It used our brand colors to build a PowerPoint presentation. Then it asked, what would you like to use it for? And I said, webinar. So it built another template that was specifically a webinar based 20 slide PowerPoint presentation with blanks and charts and what have you, but empty in our brand colors. And then I uploaded parts of the memo to it and I said, all right, Chat, this is what I'm going to give a webinar on. Can you please take the template that you've built in the webinar fashion and can you turn it into slides for the PowerPoint? That took about 30 minutes to get Chat to produce this. And the version that Chat produced was good enough that it took me, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes to an hour to then revise the presentation to the content that I'm going to present to you today. So when we talk about how AI and the law can interact, I think about it not that AI is going to replace the lawyer. You on this Zoom are critical to your client's success in whatever practice area that you may practice in. But it can aid us in being more efficient for our clients. But we have to do it in a way that's safe and protects attorney-client privileged information. So with that, let me jump in here. So this is our agenda today. And I hate to talk at people in a webinar, but for this one, and I don't usually do that, so please, if you see an email from us, most webinars are much more interactive. I really want to hear what's happening in your firm and help you try to solve a problem if I can on whatever topic I'm talking about. But today I am going to talk a bit at you. So please don't hesitate to raise a hand, interrupt me. I don't have all the answers, but to the extent that you are able to stump me with a question, I would be happy to get back to everybody on this webinar with an answer. So our agenda today, first looking at why AI is reshaping the legal profession, then looking at the biggest risks law firms are facing when it comes to AI. We're going to do a little bit of a dive into the ethical obligations when using AI. We're going to look at the ABA's formal opinion 512. We're going to look a little bit at the 50-state survey. I am not going to bore you with case law from every state, but I am going to talk a little bit about how New York is approaching it because I do think it's interesting and informative. Next, we're going to talk about practical steps for responsible AI adoption. Then we're going to talk about AI governance frameworks for law firms and, what that looks like comes in the form of policies and procedures along with training, et cetera. And then I'm going to touch on two platforms that are commonly used by small to mid-sized law firms. We're going to look a little bit at Box, which if you don't know Box, I call it the big brother of Dropbox, right? It's got better security, better file structuring, but it's a document repository system. And then we're also going to look briefly at Clio. Clio, as many of you probably know, is a practice management software. And Clio is trying to launch and has, at least in the UK, launched Clio Work, which is Clio but AI enabled. So we'll touch briefly on those. So before I get started, does anybody have any questions? Anything that they'd really like to dig in a little deeper on based on the agenda that I've just shared? No? All right, then I will continue. So first, the reality of AI in law firms. I talk to a lot of lawyers who their heads are still buried in the sand when it comes to AI. Someone said to me at a meeting last week, well, this AI fad will be over in a few years and we'll just move on. Maybe. I mean, I can't predict the future, but what we know is that Clio did a survey in 2023, and in 2023, 19% of law firms were using AI. And today, Clio finds that 79% of law firms are using generative AI in some capacity. And so it's happening. We're reading about large law firms, global law firms utilizing platforms that create a container for AI. Law firms like ours, we need to stay ahead of the curve, or I have a fear that we're just going to get run over in the AI movement. So what we know of how law firms are using AI is that they're using it in legal research and drafting. Westlaw and Lexis both have AI tools. On the corporate side, contracts analysis and document review. There are several platforms out there, but Spellbook is now Claude enabled. And Claude is one of the generative AI platforms. As to the efficacy of those documents, I can't really speak to it. I'm not using Spellbook, but it exists, so we know it exists. And then client communications and internal operations. And that's where I can say the vast majority of law firms that I've talked to that are using AI are using it to do things like build a PowerPoint presentation. Microsoft's Outlook has Copilot. Google has Gemini, and all of these different platforms are plugging AI in, and it's helping to facilitate drafting emails. It's helping to facilitate creating PowerPoint slides. With Lexis and Westlaw, it's helping to streamline legal research and potentially, writing memos on behalf of users. So why does this matter now? Well, again, if Clio is to be believed, Clio is reporting that nearly 50% of clients surveyed want to work with a law firm that is using AI. And we believe that the reason for that is that AI offers a means for more efficient legal services. I don't care what your rates are. They could be the lowest of low or the highest of high. Clients complain about legal fees. And, the interesting opportunity with AI, in my humble opinion, is to start moving further out of the billable hour mindset and business structure for a law firm and move more into fixed fee opportunities. Fixed fee really allows your expertise to lead the way and to be paying for the intellectual property that you're bringing to the conversation and not the actual time spent to complete a project. We talk about what are the biggest risks of AI. The challenge that we have as lawyers, and I have talked to more than a dozen legal vendors that are looking at AI and the law in some way, shape, or form. And they all seem to ignore this attorney-client privilege issue that we have, where we cannot upload client information into a public platform. Hard stop, right? And so, when you think about the biggest risk of AI, I always envision a firm that has 7 lawyers and has interns over the summer. And those interns are given a project, and because they're tech savvy, they're uploading client information into Chat GPT to try to create an output for the deliverable that the partner has asked for. And that is unmanaged AI, right? That is AI without a policy. That is AI without instructions for the lawyers that are utilizing AI. And then, of course, I had to add hallucinated case citations. We all know that courts have seen this. Bar associations are writing about this, and so that is, of course, a risk. And so, what are the practical steps for people like you? They are to understand the rules, understand the tools, understand the limitations, train your lawyers, train your staff on how the firm has approved that AI can be used to create efficiencies, and what platforms are we using, and then establish firm-wide policies. And I think it actually should be establish the policies and then train the lawyers in the policies. So, in order of operations, I would flip those last two. Okay, so now we're looking for guidance. We're lawyers. We want to look at the law, and where do we find that guidance? So I won't belabor this too much, but the ABA has Formal Opinion 512. It was from 2024, and it very specifically and clearly says that lawyers may use generative AI, but in using it, ethical duties must still be maintained. And some of those ethical duties include competence, confidentiality, and supervision of the lawyers doing the work. And so the opinions very specifically says to firms that you need to establish AI policies, you need to provide AI training, and then you need to monitor firm-wide compliance. And you need to do that not just with your team, but you need to do that with your vendors. So, to the extent that you're using a software platform that has AI plugged into it, you have a duty to ensure that that vendor is using the appropriate confidentiality provisions, that the information that AI is touching is not uploaded into the public domain. And that either comes from a policy that the vendor has put forth on AI, and I'll show you some of those towards the end of this presentation. Or if it's a smaller vendor, or if you're building your own software, it's a direct conversation with the vendor, with a follow-up email in writing, identifying what their AI policies are, what their AI confidentiality and security protections are. And just a little bit more on confidentiality risks, some questions to ask. Does the tool store submitted information? Who has access to the data, and is encryption used? And then just to give you an example on this, when Lexis dropped their AI feature, we tested it out at Stock Legal. We did a demo, and this was probably a year and a half ago. Lexis has answered this question, but during the demo, the way Lexis explained it to us is that as a corporate law firm, we could upload a contract into Lexis's AI platform, use their chatbot to ask questions, summarize provisions, tinker with the document in a number of different ways. And then when we ended the session, the information that we uploaded and the conversation that we had with the chatbot would disappear. And this was again pretty new into AI, brand new platform for Lexis, and we asked very specifically, does this violate the attorney-client privilege protection? And Lexis couldn't answer it. Now, like I said, they can now. They've got a policy on their generative AI plugin. But in that moment, because they couldn't answer it, we didn't move forward with the platform, despite being a tech savvy law firm and wanting to be on the not bleeding but cutting edge of technology. We just said, no, Until you can give us a definitive answer, we have an ethical obligation to say no to this. Questions to ask. And then, of course, accuracy risks. I don't want to belabor this too much because we all know AI hallucinates, but, these are important things to be aware of, double check, so that you always are complying with the duty of supervision, ensuring that your lawyers that are working for you are, if they're using some version of AI, that they're shepherdizing their cases, that they're ensuring that this is the actual law. And then I thought, you guys know this, you're lawyers, but it's worth putting into this presentation that these are, per opinion 512, the ethical duties that apply to generative AI. The duty of competence, and what we say here is, a generative AI tool's output without an appropriate degree of independent verification or review is not complying with the duty of competence. Next, with the duty of confidentiality, ensuring that the information that you're uploading isn't being uploaded into a public platform, that the generative AI tool cannot later disclose that information. The duty of supervision, we've touched on this, but the firm has to have generative AI policies and training in place. And the lawyers the senior lawyers have to be supervising the younger lawyers that are using generative AI. And then, of course, the rule of candor towards the tribunal or the court. You have to make sure that the cases that you're citing actually exist and that AI is not hallucinating. And then this is the 50-state survey that Justia has put together. I know it is a long URL and it's probably hard to, maybe you can screen capture it. But if you search Justia and AI and attorney ethics rules 50-state survey, you'll pull it up. But I thought it was worth highlighting New York because the New York Bar has released a report in 2024 with recommendations for lawyers that are using AI. And it does a really good job, in my opinion, highlighting some key guidelines around verification of AI outputs. Um, you know, and and it goes on to say that lawyers submitting briefs with AI case hallucinations are subject to monetary sanctions, and their briefs being struck. So, I'm curious when our licenses will be at issue, if that's where we're going next. But we'll keep watching. And then there is a bill in New York that is from the Senate's Internet and Technology Committee that would prohibit AI from practicing law or giving legal advice. The question that I always ask myself is, will AI empower lawyers to be even better and provide even better service to our clients? So, more of a B2B, a business to business tool? Or will AI be more of a B2C, a business to consumer tool, so that consumers can directly utilize AI to provide legal advice? I mean, I have to believe that lawyers will continue to exist, the need for us and our experience and the way that we can creatively problem solve, the experience that we have with courts and contracts and deal negotiations, that will always be necessary and useful, so that AI will empower us to be even better for our clients. But it's interesting to think about how New York is approaching this, from prohibiting AI from practicing law or giving any legal advice. Okay, so before I move on, any questions about the New York Bar Association, the American Bar Association's opinion letter, anything that you guys want to dig in a little bit more on before I move forward?
Hey, Sarah, on that, the ethics opinion, the
Yeah,
512, and I just kind of wanted to see what your kind of the position you're taking on it, because I mean, like you said, all this is new. I think there's room to move once someone, once the ABA decides to come out and clarify these things. We got to be able to pivot. I understand that, so I'm not holding you to anything. But
sure.
with respect to kind of public documents, we're kind of taking the position that if they were obtained in connection with the representation of the client, so if I got a title report, for example, because, and I only get one because I'm representing a client, it belongs to them. We don't think we can put that in personally, even though it's a public document. And I just kind of wanted to see your thoughts on that. If you kind of, more caution than not caution.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat, Jennifer. I really am. Any sort of information that we receive on behalf of a client, we are not uploading into a public database. And it begs the question, can we still, as lawyers, use AI in some way, shape, or form, and to empower us to be even better for our clients with this information. And, spoiler alert, part of what we're going to talk about when we get to the end of this presentation is how document management systems are plugging AI in and creating a data pool of protected information that is your information, that is the law firm's information. It's
Mhm.
not being uploaded into a public database. So, out of an abundance of caution, that's where I'm landing. Even if it's public information, a title report clearly just pulls from the chain of title. It tells you everything that's recorded against the property. All of that is public record. We're not uploading that into Claude's normal platform or Chat's normal platform or Gemini or Perplexity and saying, hey, analyze this for me and tell me X, Y, or Z. So yeah, I'm in that camp as well.
Okay. It's kind of ridiculous. I think there needs to be an exception to the rule made. I think it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. They have access to the whole internet, so I'm like, when are we
Yes.
going to start? I mean, I do think there needs to be some changes to the ethics rules to address some of this stuff, but I just kind of wanted to see if you were interpreting it the same way we are, or at least I am.
Yeah, and I didn't see anything in the 50 state survey. And granted, I didn't read every case, I just read the summaries of the cases. So there might be something in the nuances of let me flip back to it here, the 50 state survey that Justia did.
Yeah,
Um, might be a good place to look to see. And if you find anything, please let us all know or let me
I
know and
will.
I'll let
Yeah, and
us
I'm
all
going to
know
look at it
because,
because I do think that gives AI a little bit of an advantage because they do have access to all this information that, it's public. So they have the
yeah,
information anyway. They could probably find it if
yeah,
you asked it to, but again, I'd only ask it to if I was representing a client. I'm not doing random
right.
searches on my on client's property.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's so much easier. This is just a quick aside. I was talking to a marketing person earlier today, and we were talking about ideal client profiles. So in the marketing world, there's this it's an ICP, right? You can tell I'm not a
Yeah.
marketing professional, so I'm stumbling just a bit. But so once you have your clients ICE, or once you have an ICP on the kinds of clients that you're looking for, if you're not a law firm, if you're a regular business that is not burdened by these additional confidentiality provisions per your ethical rules, you could take an ICP and you could upload your client list into ChatGPT. And you could say, hey, Chat, take my ICP, take this client list. So now you know what I'm telling you, I want to try to attract, and the work I'm actually doing for these types of clients, and build a lookalike list for me, a lookalike list of businesses that I can create a marketing campaign to, or what have you. But it's just very different with lawyers and law firms because of our ethical duties around confidentiality and attorney-client privilege.
Right. And I don't know many clients that don't want to speed up. Nobody cares about title other than real estate attorneys. So I don't know any client, you can get, my understanding is you can get consent. And if the client consents and you do full disclosure, you can put it out. I don't know, most of my clients would consent they do not want to pay the rates for a title review if we can do it quicker. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing it does well, is extract information,
Yeah.
and organizes it. So I do think it can do a good job at it. It's just, and I think clients will consent to it. And that's why I think, these rules kind of need to change, to accommodate the fact that they can get this, the AI tools can get this information anyway. It's available, it's public. And so anything to me that is public should be fair game, kind of like a confidentiality rule.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense too. And, I think this is an incredibly dynamic situation.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
so, we're watching, I know you're watching to try to see, what are courts deciding? What is the ABA going to add to this opinion? I sit on the American Bar Association's Business Law Section Council. And at every council meeting, we are in some way, shape, or form talking about an AI issue and making a recommendation to the larger American Bar Association on our position on policies that will impact AI. So it's a hot topic and
yeah,
rightly so.
oh yeah.
We need help, right?
Yeah, I know I do.
Yeah. Well, and it's tough for clients because clients are using AI like this all day long. I mean, our tech savvy clients are. And so when we tell them we can't and here's why, they get really frustrated and I understand.
Right,
So
and we can't, even though they've, when I'm sure you're getting the same things here, where someone has drafted something, a document, a contract, whatever it is, off AI and sent it to you, and they think it looks, it's never fine. But,
yeah,
because I do think you have
yeah,
to see the output, you have to see the end output to be able to prompt the AI properly. And that's where the
yeah,
experience comes in, and that's why, we do have jobs, I think.
yeah.
But most people, if you're not an attorney, I think that's hard to do, but we're getting them, and then we cannot run them back through because we're not the ones who, again, you're getting it in connection with the client representation.
That's right. Well, and AI is hallucinating even in contract review. I mean, we had a client that, we didn't draft the operating agreement, but the client uploaded the operating agreement into chat and said, chat, pick, pick this apart, right? And so the client is coming to us and saying, hey, I need to, and us meaning stock legal, just to make sure I'm being really clear here, and saying to stock legal, hey, here's the AI analysis of this operating agreement as you amend and restate it. Please take this into consideration. And they don't know what they're talking about, right? They don't know if it's correct. They just know that this is what chat spit out. And, as we're reviewing it, we're like, no, this isn't right. Like
Yeah.
this is, and so then we're having to explain to the client why chat is wrong. And it's, is it really creating efficiencies in that situation? I mean, it probably took us longer to amend and restate an operating agreement because we had to go back and forth with the client about what Chat GPT said.
Right,
So,
right, exactly, exactly. Whereas if you had the conversation to begin with, even if you're coaching your client on how to prompt the thing, like, I
yes,
think that would be, I just don't think you can do it unless you see the end product. And probably goes to the licensing issue too, and who can be, using these
yeah,
tools for legal work.
that's right. That's right. No, that's a great question, Jen. Thanks for jumping in. I appreciate it. Okay, so we talked a little bit about where firms are making mistakes, and that really is, our belief is unrestricted use of these AI tools, no policies, no training, and I don't want to belabor that, so we'll keep moving. I will say that you can. Clio has an AI policy for law firms available on their website. And, Stock Legal has written AI policies not for law firms, but for businesses. And so, these are the big five things that we look at, when we're thinking about law firms. We added ethical standards and bias mitigation. But no matter what, you're thinking about data protection and confidentiality. What are the approved tools that your employees are using? What are your confidentiality guidelines? And then what are your review requirements? And, it could be that, I don't know. I'm fascinated with Claude's co-work. If you haven't, it dropped, I don't know, maybe a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago now. I'm actually considering taking one of our old computers, completely wiping it, not connecting any of our systems to it. So there's no email, there's no documents, there's nothing. But plugging in co-work and creating a separate Dropbox account and trying to tinker with what I have in Dropbox, maybe creating a Gmail account even that doesn't have anything to do with any of my businesses, and really trying to understand how Claude's co-work can live on your desktop. This is how they explain it. Live on your desktop and be able to create a spreadsheet, create a this, create a that without having to upload anything into it. So yeah, lots of interesting tools thinking about, for your firm, if you're going to use one tool, having an expert in that tool, getting really clear about what the guidelines are around that tool, or at least limiting the number of tools that are approved for your employees, your staff, your administration, and your lawyers. We talked about training for lawyers. We talked a little bit about opportunities for law firm to improve efficiency, reduce operational costs, and enhance client services. I mentioned at the start that, in so many ways, this really does start to argue for fixed fee work. I know small to mid-sized businesses very much appreciate a fixed fee approach from their law firm. And, it'll be interesting to see how the billable hour model moves or doesn't move. And if there are more firms that are using AI in the approved ways, moving into a fixed fee model. Okay, so this is where I want to spend just a little bit of time. I really want to dig in just for a moment into platforms and generative AI because my stance has been for a long time now. Um, I am not investing, so I'll roll back for just a moment. There was a statistic widely reported at the end of last year that if you as a company were not budgeting 1% of your overall budget to AI, you were going to be left behind. And as a business owner, as from a legal back office perspective, and as a law firm owner from the stock legal perspective, my position was, is, and likely will continue to be in the foreseeable future. I want to become an expert in how AI is being woven into the existing platforms that we currently use. And, there are, a dozen different document management systems for small to mid-sized law firms. There are dozens more for mid to large size law firms, if not hundreds. Um, I have to believe that the vast majority of them are building out AI inside those platforms. And so going back to Jennifer, your question about the title commitment and how to, can we use AI to create a memo, a title memo for the client on what the title report has to say? Um, you know, I the way that Box is using AI right now, I think the answer is that inside Box, we could use Box's AI chatbot and tell the AI chatbot with very clear prompts and instructions how to review and analyze the title report and do a first draft of a title memo. Now, to the extent that you can show the AI chatbot what a memo that you've done before looks like, I think that would be really helpful. And I we're experimenting with it by let's say that you're drafting an asset purchase agreement, and you're trying to figure out I know I drafted a provision like this in the past. I can't find it in my library of templates. Can I pull the last 50 asset purchase agreements that we've done as a firm, put them all into a folder and create our own data pool? and ask Box's chatbot to search for a provision that says X, Y, or Z? And we're finding the answer is yes. And it's getting better and better and better. And so when you think about an opportunity to have the power of generative AI, but comply with our ethical duties, I think this is the place to look. I really do. And I wanted to put in this presentation for you. This is Box's position on AI and its confidentiality around AI. I won't read it to you, but they go they are very specific on who owns the data that the chatbot is utilizing to run the prompts that you're putting into Box's chatbot, and what it will and won't do. So Box won't train the AI model using customer content without the customer's explicit authorization. And talking about what their AI output looks like, how they're adhering to permissions, what their data security looks like, how they're protecting user and enterprise data, and how they're using AI models. So I'll pause for just a moment and ask, is anybody on the Zoom using AI within the document management platform that they have?
I am. We have Harvey, or
Harvey,
we,
yeah.
yeah. And so, yeah.
And how is it working for you?
Sarah, I kind of did what you did. I think we had similar styles in school. I got scared and I ran out and kind of learned the stuff. Um,
Yeah, right?
Really
Yes.
quick. Yeah, I spent a couple months at the end of last year into this year kind of diving in deep on this stuff, but I think it's incredible. I think that it can
Yeah,
do things. I kind of got wind that what was going on behind the scenes, that this had been sped up. Well, I picked up that book. I don't know if you read Empire of AI by Katie
yeah,
Howe, and I picked that up and I kind of then I started reading that and then I was like, oh, I got to go even faster, like
yeah, yes.
but so I kind of knew what I was doing, kind of going into it. But so I think having that knowledge helped me to know the platform, just kind of getting on these other platforms, ChatGPT, using them for personal things, and all kinds of things. It helped me to it translated to work fine. And
Yeah,
so I was able to kind of get in, but I think it's incredible. I mean, the amount of information that you can get in 2 minutes, or have a lease review that would have taken me, I think I did a lease that maybe in half the time that it would have taken me on an initial draft. Um,
yeah,
and it was a smaller lease. And I think the bigger ones, the more complicated the document, the more likely it is you have to think through it and do it yourself.
right.
But for the title, for things that are, and even for drafting initial drafts and stuff, if it's a repetitive client that you do a lot of work for, I think it's incredible.
I love that. Yeah, everybody I know that's used Harvey has had a similar response. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, the worst thing about it is the formatting. They need to fix their form. They need to get me
Yes.
to partner with like a spell book because they can, it
Yes.
doesn't do my formatting the way I like it. I'm
Yeah.
on like one thing.
Yes.
I think I spent more time on the formatting than I did on the actual content that I could. You can't bill for my formatting because I'm doing it at midnight. So
Right. Yes, exactly. Yes.
but I think it is. I agree with you, Sarah. If you're not getting on board here, I just don't see being able to stay up with kind of the times. You know what I'm saying? I mean, even if we stay at a billable hour model, someone else will be able to bill it out at a faster speed than you.
Yeah. The advice that I'm hearing across industries is, the gold standard right now is just try to use AI in some way, shape, or form in a safe, confidential way for about an hour every day. If you can do that, you will be leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that's right. Because I do think that, Sarah, what you said about people being in kind of denial, that is happening for sure. And really attorneys,
Yeah.
I think, are, we don't want to think that that someone can just come in and regenerate us. I think it's an ego thing, whatever. But it turns out it's possible.
Yeah.
And sometimes,
Yeah.
like, and the thing is, our clients, just like they're drafting their own stuff, they don't necessarily know the difference between a good operating agreement and a bad operating agreement. And so,
Right.
when they're getting it and they're getting it for a much cheaper price, it just, how it goes.
Yeah. It's so true. It really
Yeah, so we
is.
have to be able to use it effectively so that we can do what they're doing, but do it right. To
Right.
learn how to prompt it.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And I
So
think the
true.
prompting is the big thing. Being able to prompt it, you see the output, and then prompt it in the way that you want to see the output.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
But I
Thank you for
agree with you. I
sharing.
used it to learn this there. I used it all for personal stuff. I
Yeah.
did not even put in client to learn it. That's what I was doing at least an hour a day. But, I was having it do recipes, taking pictures
Yeah.
of my kitchen pantry, having it put together. Nothing was missing for
Yes.
ingredients, of course, because I'd forget one of if
Right.
there was more.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a really great idea. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's
So like,
fantastic.
and so using it for your personal stuff. And that's what I've told before we release it to the associates. I've told them all to get the paid version of chat. It's better than
Yeah.
the unpaid. It's $20 a month. And,
Right.
that one can pass the bar and I guess the other one can't.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So, but I played with it, say exactly what you're saying, for an hour a day. And that translates to being able to use it. You will be able to use it for legal stuff if you can use it for your personal stuff.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Anyone else using AI in their practice with some regularity right now?
I'll admit I'm using it with LBO, perfecting SOPs, and for software that I may haven't touched on, I'm like, okay, give me some information. I'm using it as a resource to learn. And then I can double check. Or like when I'm going through a video and something seems more confusing because I've been doing some tech things that are pushing my boundaries of experience. And I go in and say, explain this to me
Yeah.
simply. And that's come in handy. And then it's been making my volunteer activities with scouts much more efficient, on a personal side. So I'm a
Love
convert.
that.
I didn't think I would. I'm ready to name mine, and
Sure.
so I know someone that says they've done that. I'm like, oh, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So, I was helping in my free time, I was helping a friend build a website because, what else do you do, right? And it was inside Go High Level, which is a platform that I've never used before. And, it was just a one-page website. It was really just like announcing a bunch of community events. And before I even started, I went into Chat GPT and I said, all right, Chat, I need to build this exact kind of website in Go High Level. Can you walk me through the steps? And 12 steps later, that was my output. I followed all 12 steps, and in an hour, I had built a very basic website for exactly what this person needed. And so, I mean, there's those types of things. And Monica's probably referencing Legal Back Office is moving over to Freshdesk as a way to streamline all of our email correspondence. And so, Monica has had to become a tech guru. And Freshdesk is great. They've got wonderful support and all of those parts and pieces, but enabling Freshdesk for every firm that we work with has been a monumental task because everybody's email is set up somewhat differently. And so, Monica, I'm guessing you are using chat to help you solve some of the firm's tech issues that,
Yes.
LBO is struggling with. Is that fair to say?
Yes, because the new security abbreviations, that's a big thing, is to figure out, okay, what does this do? I remember hearing STMP before, but what's
Yeah.
SSL?
Yeah.
And again, working with the nuances of the different ways exchanges are hosted, that was really what it came down to. I had one great bit of advice from a coworker on when you're giving instructions. She learned hers through the recipe, which was mentioned earlier. Tell it to research and find a recipe. don't tell it to create one because they can leave out important ingredients. And she learned that the hard way. And I'm not sure exactly what happened, but the look on her face was just enough to remind me, okay, ask it to research versus
Yes.
create, and you will minimize some of the hallucinations that are out there.
Yeah, it is the specificity of the prompts, right? And so that's a great tip. I'm just imagining baking something and like leaving out the baking soda or something like that, right?
Yes, yes. Now, I have a joke about AI because I was trying to create some imagery for scouting. And when it comes to the hallucination, I wanted it to create an image of a caribou. And it gave me an image of a moose, very different structure to the antlers. So I used the scientific name for caribou, and it gave me a moose. I used a 3-word scientific name for caribou. It gave me a moose. So I said, fine, give me a reindeer. It put a red belt harness on the moose.
The moose.
And at that point, I'm like, oh, so you can
Was it pulling
easily,
Santa's sleigh? That's what I want to know.
well, it was scouts do a lot of things with assigning animals to patrol. So I
Yeah.
needed a caribou. Um, but again, so that's a prime example of you really need to pay attention to what you're doing. If I did not know the difference, in what it is, and that's why using it in conjunction with your own research would be a key thing
Yeah.
when the more important of a topic you're dealing with.
No, thank you for sharing that, Monica. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Great point. Great story, actually. I love that. Uh, Anybody else want to share a little bit about their experience with using AI? Yeah,
This
Tia,
is
go ahead.
Tia. Hi.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, so this is very recent. I've discovered Notebook LM, which is
Okay.
attached to Google. And if you use it within a Google business account or business workspace account, whatever that is, um, it all stays local. Nothing is shared. They say the same thing for your personal account, but for some reason it's some heightened level with the business, and it all stays local. And the idea is that what I've been playing with since last weekend is that you can load in all your statutes, all your rules, journal articles, podcasts by experts, panel discussions that, for example, how I messed around with it on the family law side is I loaded up transcripts from the Family Law Institute, from CLEs that I thought were really instructive, that involved the local judges. I put in our rules, case law, all any kind of. What the idea is just to build a library,
Hmm.
and then it will make up a podcast. Even you can get slide decks, podcasts, and the idea is what I understood this. I think I came across this on Reddit is that a lot of PhD candidates will use this in order to review the amount of material that they have to review in a week. And so, if you're an auditory learner, you can have it create a podcast with the information. And I just messing around with it, I was blown away because it does not touch outside sources unless
Hmm.
you provide a web link for it to use as a source. It will not, it will only use the sources that are within the notebook. And then you can feed it the prompt saying, for example, draft me discovery uh, for a case where there may be concern regarding marital waste within this library. And I was blown away,
Wow.
blown away. So
Okay.
I don't even put in my client's information. There's no need. I use it as a
Yeah.
library, and
Brilliant.
the drafting is better. Quite frankly, it is
Yeah.
more, it's updated, it's succinct. And not only that, it provides you can get a little note. So it'll say like one at the bottom, like a note. And then it will take you to the source where it pulled it from. So you can verify it, which is
Yes.
huge. So you
Yes.
still don't have to rely. You're like, I don't know, maybe it's doing something weird. Well, I go back and I can site check every single one of them and how it's laid
Brilliant.
out. So I've truly only been less than a week, but I am
Yeah.
blown away. And you can make notebooks. We do animal law. So I'm starting to build an animal law notebook. And this is just that, I used to practice construction defect. I don't have room in my brain for
Yeah.
the statutes offhand. This is just
Right.
such a great way to touch things very quickly and get a quickly, and it will build. Let me see. So the podcast thing was totally weird. It just said audio overview, and I hit it and I was like, okay, whatever. And it's two people. You would think that these are human beings on a regular podcast discussing the material that you've uploaded and you can tell it, make it campy or
Yeah.
short, brief, long, whatever. And it's like a little CLE in your ear. But then it will make flashcards, a mind map, a slide deck, quiz you. So that's what I've been using just recently, and I'm pretty excited about it. I find it to be very accurate and so far and cheap. I did
Yeah.
upgrade to the next level so that because there seems to be a limit. And so since I've upgraded, haven't had anything. And that was like $10 extra. So
Oh, that is brilliant. Thank you for sharing that, Tia.
yeah, you're welcome.
I've heard of this, and I think I don't know for certain, but I think this is what my son's a junior in high school, and last year he uploaded his notes into a platform and had AI create a podcast for him. So
That might
I
be it.
wonder if it was,
Yeah.
yeah, Notebook
Yeah, it's really cool.
LM. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
awesome. But
And
it
it's
never,
great. I get creeped out about the client confidentiality, so we always come
sure,
back to that. And it's like it has to be completely sanitized. Like, what if I just
yeah,
want to access my own library? That what this
yeah,
does, how I saw this on Reddit is that folks were using the business model and uploading their old pleadings. So it had their tone, their arguments. They could use their old pleadings as a library, create a
yeah,
new argument. You should tell me the weaknesses in this argument.
yeah.
And I mean, I was just the idea of it, and I'm just having fun on the library side. So,
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That
yeah,
is
you're
a
welcome.
great, and you're creating a proprietary data pool that confidentiality is protected.
Mhm.
You have some assurance that public AI isn't hallucinating. And so, you're checking the boxes of the
Mhm.
ABA's opinion. So that's brilliant. Yeah, thank you. Well, we are almost at time. I will tell you, you're not missing much more in my presentation. We talked a little bit about Clio at the beginning, and Clio is trying to release an AI-enabled Clio platform as well. I think they're trying to parlay on Claude's co-work by calling it Clio Work. But there's just not enough information out there yet. I don't know anybody who's used it. And then that gets us to the end. And as a lawyer, time is important to me. It is 3 o'clock Central on the nose. We're out of time for questions, but I want to say thank you to all of you for joining us. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for jumping in and telling me a little bit about your experience. I don't disappear. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me through the calendar invite. You should have an email address for legal back office that I monitor. And yeah, if you discover anything, interesting about AI, I would love to hear about it. And to the extent that you're open to it, I'm happy to share it with this group as well. I've got all of our email addresses in the calendar invite. So thank you all so much. I hope to see you again on another one of LBO's webinars. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks,
Bye,
Sara.
everybody. You're welcome. Yeah. Bye, everybody.